I want to begin with this. CBS, Sam Quinn, came out with an article ranking the best coaches in the NBA so far. He did this by a tier list. He also said that he had done this with categories, that he is giving his reasoning as to why he is ranking coaches where he is ranking them. And one that really surprised me, and this is not because we're huge Orlando Magic fans here in the city of Jacksonville, but it still seems to me that the Magic aren't getting their respect quite yet. Coming in at number 19 was going to be head coach Jamahl Mosley. Now, he does say that this is a young team. Jamahl Mosley inherited a young group that's still learning how to win a lot of games, but they are progressing. We saw what they did in the NBA playoffs, just coming one game short of going to the second round and facing the Boston Celtics. They had an 18-point lead against the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland. Game 7 just wasn't able to finish the deal there. You have to believe that the Orlando Magic are going to come out guns blazing once the ball tips off for the regular season. But he does believe that the team on defense isn't buying in, which to me, I don't believe. He says that this can't solely be the Jonathan Isaac and Jalen Suggs show, almost saying that those are the only two real defenders that they have on that end of the basketball court. And I understand that he's talking about last season. I do believe, however, that you're going to see Jalen Suggs and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who they acquired this offseason, be absolute terrors on the defensive end. He still believes that maybe Paolo Banchero is a guy that you still have to talk into playing defense because he carries so much of the offensive load. Listen, I think Paolo Banchero, if that is to be the case, is going to be one of the better defenders, two-way guys in the NBA, because in today's game, you really have to showcase your two-way ability. And here's a guy that's about 6'9", 6'10", can run the floor like a deer, can score with the best of them. I think was probably a player that benefited the most from the opportunity that he got playing in the NBA playoffs with such a young roster. He and Franz Wagner are going to be a tandem that is going to be a force to reckon with for years to come. But to get back to Jamahl Mosley, and you ranking him at number 19 under guys, I should say, like Taylor Jenkins from the Memphis Grizzlies, which I understand he hasn't had Ja Morant over the last year and a half. So you believe that when he has a guy such as Ja Morant in his lineup, he's looked at as one of the better coaches in the NBA. But Quinn Snyder, I understand that from his Utah days, he was one of the better coaches that we had in the association, but he's with an Atlanta Hawks team that's really almost running in place. Would you like to argue? They're not really getting worse, but they're not getting better. And Jamahl Mosley, every year since he's been named the head coach of the Orlando Magic, the team has gotten better. The team has gotten wins that maybe a lot of individuals didn't think that they were going to be able to get. Heck, I was one to argue the beginning of last season when I was talking to a couple of NBA guys that maybe the Orlando Magic would make the playoffs via the play-in. They completely shocked the world, and they were able to go to the playoffs and hang with the Cleveland Cavaliers team as the number 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. Jamahl Mosley has done an absolute great job, and you've heard it week to week when the show was on terrestrial radio. We had guys such as Dante Marchitelli, Jeff Turner, Kendrick Douglas, Jake Chapman, Jonathan Osborne, Philip Rossman Reich. All of them spoke glowingly about the job that Jamahl Mosley has done. This is going to be an individual that should get more respect, but the Orlando Magic now have to show this for another year. So if he is putting him in a tier, which he does, that says you're doing well, but it's still a tad bit early before we can have you skyrocket up a list, then the Orlando Magic now have to potentially get back to where they were a year before. They're going to have to be one of the top 4 seeds within the Eastern Conference and win their first round series. Not just get it to a Game 7, not just get it to a Game 7 and be up 18 points at the half, but close it out and get to a second round and make it competitive in the second round, whether you're facing a team like the Philadelphia 76ers or even the Boston Celtics, if you're looking to dethrone them, because that's going to be one of the teams in which you're going to have to face in order to get to the NBA Finals, or at least that's presumed so. CBS also wrote an article when it comes to Paolo Banchero, saying that he's probably the second best player in the NBA when you are accounting for guys that are age 22 and younger. But Hoops Hype, when we talked about the top 25 players in which they listed, they had Paolo Banchero somewhere in the early 20s. I think that Paolo Banchero is probably listening to that. Paolo Banchero is probably seeing that. There really isn't a lot of respect going to Paolo Banchero as of yet because the Orlando Magic haven't won yet. And that's a fair argument for you to use. But there can also be an argument that if Jamahl Mosley would have won that first round series, would he still be the 19th best coach in the NBA? I don't know. Now, he does rank J.J. Redick as the last coach in terms of status in the NBA, and I get it. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on a guy that's coming out of the podcast room into the NBA sidelines with no prior coaching experience. And I don't want to put a lot of pressure on J.J. Redick, even if that's coming from a Los Angeles Lakers fan. This is a guy who many were trying to say he could possibly be the next Pat Riley. But Pat Riley was an assistant coach for 2 years before he took an NBA job being a head coach full time. Jason Kidd, we saw come from the stands to then being an NBA head coach, but he failed in Brooklyn. He also failed in Milwaukee. He had to fall on his face a couple of times. So I can understand the reasoning as to why a guy like Sam Quinn would rank J.J. Redick last. Now, here was another interesting one that I thought about. He does have Doc Rivers kind of in the middle of the pack here. I mean, just, the mid-teens, late teens. Doc Rivers, doesn't it feel like he has just a lot to prove? I mean, he's been a great coach, but it really hasn't shown itself since 2008 when he won the championship in Boston. Look at the names that this guy has had since winning that championship in Boston. Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan. Remember that LA Clippers team? Wasn't able to get them to the Western Conference Finals. Joel Embiid, James Harden, wasn't able to get that team over the hump either. Now he has Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I understand that was a team year one trying to figure everything out. He came in the last half of the season, had him playing great post All-Star, but this is going to be a guy now in a Milwaukee team that has a lot to prove, in my opinion. We talked about the Philadelphia 76ers in the last show. This time, I think Doc Rivers is a guy that is going to need to win now. Giannis is probably a guy that wants to win now as well. Damian Lillard said he wants a championship on his resume. They're going to have to figure it out there in Milwaukee. So that was something in which I agreed with. Now, Nick Nurse, he has as one of the elite coaches. I think he had him at number 4, maybe number 5 in his list. Nick Nurse now has a lot of eyes on him now. Joel Embiid just signed a 3-year contract extension. You break the bank to get Paul George. Tyrese Maxey is going to be a guy in which is going to be an exciting third piece, maybe even the second piece. We'll see how Paul George wants to play that out with the star guard. If it doesn't work here, it seems to me Joel Embiid is giving this at least 3 more years after his original deal is done. He's going to give this 3 more years. If it doesn't work out, I think heads begin to roll in Philadelphia. I like what Nick Nurse has done. Nick Nurse is an NBA championship winning head coach. He did so with the Toronto Raptors, with Kawhi Leonard. We remember that in 2019 and what a great job and what a great showing he was able to display with the Toronto Raptors in defeating the Golden State Warriors. Well, now you have 3-star players, and he really hasn't had that in his career. How much more pressure now is going to be on Nick Nurse as a whole when you're looking at him as one of the elite, or naming him one of the elite coaches in the NBA? It's going to be something to see, especially now when you have Joel Embiid signing that extension. Lastly, he has as his number 1 coach, Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra, because he has taken teams that maybe had no business going to the NBA Finals, maybe having no business defeating a few of the teams that they have over the years after the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh saga. He's taken teams that have been spearheaded by Jimmy Butler to an NBA championship. And remember, this was a guy that LeBron James wanted fired. He wanted Pat Riley to come back from the front office and be an NBA head coach once again and coach the Miami Heat team led by LeBron James, and Pat Riley said, no, I'm going to allow Eric Spoelstra to be the guy. And he has developed this guy into one of the better coaches in the NBA. Is he the best coach? Depending on what you like to read from Sam Quinn and the reason as to why he says he's the best coach, you can say that it is fair. I still look at a guy like Steve Kerr and say X's and O's wise, he may be one of the better guys that you're going to see within the NBA coaching. Now, he doesn't have the roster around him to be a coach that's going to make it into the playoffs or have a deep playoff run. However, again, we thought that before they won their 4th NBA championship and Kevin Durant left. We thought that the window was closed. The saga was over. Steve Kerr, as well as Stephen Curry, showed the entire NBA world that that was not the case. Now, finally, there was one for me that was an interesting one when you talk about some of the great NBA head coaches. Mike Malone. Mike Malone has done a great job with the Denver Nuggets, but can we start arguing now that maybe the championship window is closing? Now, I'll say no. Of course, I'll say no. When you have a guy like Nikola Jokic on your team, you're always going to be in the mix, but you have lost a lot of pieces after winning your NBA championships or going deep into the playoffs. You've lost out on Jeff Green. You have lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You lost Bruce Brown after a drunk Mike Malone said, hell no, Bruce Brown is not going to be leaving the Denver Nuggets. Now this is a team that has paid Jamal Murray. They've also paid Nikola Jokic. They're also paying MPJ, Michael Porter Jr. And now you have to wonder, are they going to pay top dollar to keep Aaron Gordon? That'll probably be your core 4. But is this a team within the Western Conference that is going to be able to continue to fight the way that they do when the West is getting so much better? And that is going to be the question for me when it comes to this NBA season and where they have Michael Malone ranked. If the window is not closed, he has to be able to show that. If it is closed, how much longer does he stay in Denver? Denver is always going to be a competitive team, as I said before. However, it seems like the window is starting to close because of the pieces in which you have lost. Those are just my opinions. You can read the full article on CBS. I would love to hear your opinions as to where coaches were ranked, and is Jamahl Mosley not getting a fair shake as to where he was ranked in the top coaches in the association?